going on, New York Giants fans? AGP back again from the Big Blue in the Bronx YouTube channel. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are staying safe. It is a very rainy Wednesday here where I am. I don't know the weather by you guys, but thank you guys for coming back once again. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, turn that notification button on so you are notified when a live stream pops or a video drops. In this video, we'll be talking about the draft. I'm going to reveal my top 10 on my big board, who I want the Giants to take, my top 10 options. And then I'm going to talk about the possible trade down options with two teams, which team has the better value in terms of draft picks, and the options at both of those draft positions. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the first one, which is my big board. Pull this up. First is Rashawn Slater, offensive lineman out of Northwestern. He is very versatile. He's a good all-around offensive lineman, the second best prospect in this class. He opted out of 2020, so teams have to look at his 2019 tape. But he's very versatile. He can play guard. He could play possibly center in the NFL. He is best known at tackle, though. And if the Giants draft him, very versatile piece. He can go to guard if the Giants need him to. The way I look at it as of right now, Matt Parrott is a starting right tackle going into next year. I'm not necessarily counting Nate Solder on anything because of his physical fitness in terms of football and stuff like that after him opting out. And I know I should consider the same for Rashawn Slater, but if Slater can, get back to it faster, I think he has better use than Nate Solder. Slater can move inside at guard, and I'm not putting anything bad on Shane Lemieux, but Shane Lemieux could work out his weaknesses or even compete with Will Hernandez at left guard. So I think that is potentially an option for the Giants at 11. And I really do like this guy from the film I've seen on him, from the guys that do the film on him, like Vonch Lombardi and all those other guys that do the film. And I also just look at, people will put up clips, Rashawn Slater versus, let's say, I don't know, Ohio State. They'll show some clips of him just like trashing guys or whatever. And, it'd be awesome to have two guys on the same line that have trashed Chase Young in college. Well, actually, no. Thomas didn't trash Chase Young in college. He trashed him in the NFL. But if Slater trashed him in college, and if Thomas trashed him in the NFL, boy, we're going to have a good offensive line. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. So the next guy, Devonta Smith, I'll pull up his stats right here, because I really like this guy. And I did the research on him. He is a very small guy, 6'0", 166 pounds. A lot of people are kind of turned off by that. I'm not. Dynamic receiver. Past 2 seasons, 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards. Last year, meaning 2019, I always reference that. I don't know why. But let's go back. 2019, 14 touchdowns, 23 in 2020. He took over a lot of time for Jalen Waddle, who was injured with an ankle injury. Really good receiver. Obviously, Alabama has different types of athletes in terms of football, more speed, just better products overall, even though that some of them actually don't make it at the NFL level. I think Devonta Smith is a good piece, a great piece for this offense. He's not going to be the number 1 wide receiver. He will be likely the number 2 if he comes in right away. I know Sterling Shepard will probably find his way into the offense. He's a very good receiver. I know a lot of people hate on Sterling Shepard because of his injuries and stuff like that, but I think him and Daniel Jones have a connection. But Kenny Golladay is the number 1. Devonta Smith, number 2. Sterling Shepard, number 3. With maybe a resurgence in Evan Ingram, I'm not getting my hopes up, and maybe Kyle Rudolph. That could be a pretty good offense. And if you have Rashawn Slater, and obviously, let me take that back, because if the Giants actually got 2 first-round picks and got to select both of them, they'd probably have to give something up. And we don't want to do that unless it's Evan Ingram. But anyway, just to finally settle the Devonta Smith argument, great receiver out of Alabama. I know a lot of people say, oh, Jalen Waddle's the better receiver and all this type of stuff, but I honestly think Devonta Smith right now is better than Waddle. And I know NFL scouts think Waddle's better than Smith because they comp him better. Even though they're 2 different receivers, Waddle is more of the, in my opinion, Curtis Samuel, Tyreek Hill-like type. So, next player is Patrick Surtain. Let me take this off the board because it does not apply to him. Patrick Surtain, cornerback. A lot of people know this. I have some questions about Adoree Jackson as the second corner, the long-term committal regarding his contract, 5 years, 3 years, $39 million. Obviously, it's not 13 per year. It's, divided up, not equally, but in terms of incentives and stuff like that. I just really scared of this long-term committal because he didn't work out in Tennessee. Why not draft a guy like Surtain? One of the few weaknesses with him is the fact that he is not very good with the deep ball. A lot of questions there. And the thing with the Giants defense, you can work to his strengths in terms of like zone and man and stuff like that, because Patrick Graham, with the misfits at corner last year, he knew how to, hide the corner too. It wasn't always on Bradbury, and he found ways. Just generally. If you were a Giants fan watching the games, you didn't see the corner two getting attacked a lot like DeAndre Baker the year before. With Surtain, you could probably mix in a bit of Adoree Jackson in there, because Adoree Jackson knows how to catch up to the number one receiver. You could maybe give Surtain time on the bench, or just time, not like 100% of the snaps right away. You could probably give it to Adoree Jackson and then ease him in a little bit. I don't mean to sound like that in terms of the 11th overall pick, because that's not something you would have to expect. But definitely they could work to Patrick Surtain's strengths in terms of, benefiting from the fact that, you have Adoree Jackson, and Surtain, his weakness is Adoree Jackson's strength. You get what I'm saying. So the next guy is Jalen Waddle. The thing with him, in my opinion, is his injury history. Sure, he's a dynamic receiver. He can fit in the slot. He can fit in the backfield. He can fit, on the outside. But the problem is he's coming off an ankle injury. And a lot of people say, it's just an ankle injury. He'll be fine for training camp or whatever. Team doctors were not allowed to do work on the patients and the different prospects this year. That's a problem because of COVID-19. And a lot of teams were probably suspicious of what that ankle looks like right now. And if, Devonta Smith's still on the board, I bet a lot of teams would take him over Jalen Waddle, not because, of production, probably because of the injury as well, because they don't want to risk it that high. And I'm not saying Jalen Waddle's a bad receiver. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. But injury history, especially for the fact that doctors couldn't do the work this year, kind of scares me a little bit. But if he was 100% healthy, I would say, okay, dynamic piece for this offense. And he could still be that. But once again, put in those injury worries, and there's my verdict on that. So number 5, Elijah Vera-Tucker. And this is an interesting kind of prospect in terms of NFL comp-wise. I don't listen to a lot of the NFL comps. If you go on draft profiles, they'll comp a player. Elijah Vera-Tucker's comp is Will Hernandez, our current left guard. It is interesting because, in my opinion, what I expect out of an NFL comp is that they'll make a comparison to, let's just say, I don't know, Rashawn Slater, Larry Allen, or somebody like that. But Vera-Tucker's comp is Will Hernandez. Tucker spent the last year at tackle, spent the year before at guard, so another versatile offensive lineman. I don't think, and I looked at his film and his game tape from USC, I don't think he would be a reach at 11. I know a lot of people consider that. I'm going to differ. I just think he is that good that, if you want to draft him over Waddle and the Giant fan base erupts, and I would basically come in the defense, hey, we need offensive line, and I would basically come to the Giants defense if they did that. I don't think they will do that, because I think they have slightly better sights on a wide receiver than an offensive lineman, and they may value Elijah Vera-Tucker lower, but we'll see what happens. But Vera-Tucker's my number 5. My number 6 is Micah Parsons. With this guy at Penn State, blitz linebacker, you can't say he's blitz boy like Jamal Adams, but he's a very versatile piece, or was at Penn State. And the thing I say to everybody, he's basically the Isaiah Simmons, the new chew toy of this draft. And this is not a rip on Parsons, but a lot of players that have played multiple positions at the college level, a lot of people go goo goo gaga over these types of players like Isaiah Simmons, and they don't realize when they get to the regular level, they're basically limited to 2 positions. And with Deone Bucannon and possibly Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, they're limited to safety and linebacker. And Micah Parsons, he's probably not playing safety, so you'll probably just have to keep him at linebacker. Now, dynamic player on the defense opted out in 2020, so that's something to keep in mind. Also, something to keep in mind, there was sexual assault allegations, and there was something with him and Yetur Gross-Matos a year ago suing James Franklin or something like that. I have to do my research because I can't be making false claims, but I know there are some off-the-field stuff. That's probably why I would stay away from him. Not to take away from his dynamicness on the defense. I keep using that word, but I just don't want a DeAndre Baker situation where, we see the signs before the draft, we take the player, and something happens. But with Parsons, in terms of a scheme fit, A lot of people see that he could be a scheme fit. I wouldn't mind taking him in terms of that, but it depends on what the Giants choose as their defensive identity this year. A lot of people said last year they were going to be a man defense. They ended up being much more of a zone defense because of the defensive pieces. Maybe they blitz more this year because they have Adoree Jackson, add a couple of pieces to the defense. Maybe they draft a rusher. So maybe with the updated pieces and the updated talent, they just go out there and say, listen, we're going to be a blitz defense, and we'll take Micah Parsons with the 11th overall pick if he is there. So that is why I have Parsons at 6. Number 7, Jalen Phillips, defensive end out of Miami. I'm going to use this word again. He's a dynamic player on the defense. Good in the run game, good in the pass game. The reason why he is not a first-round defensive end to a lot of people is the fact that he has an injury history to the point where he retired at one time. I think it was after the 2018 season at USC. Actually, no, it was UCLA. After the 2018 season, he retired. Concussion was one of the injuries he got. I think he had like a wrist injury or something like that as well. You probably have to look it up, but he has an injury history. That's why a lot of people want to stay away from him. And I don't blame them, but at the same time, you can't draft scared in certain situations. And when you have the option to go best player available, it depends. Just like if the Giants were to take Gregory Rousseau, which I would not be on the board with, I would not be on the boat with. If Jalen Phillips is taken by the Giants and he doesn't work out, but the rest of the defense is playing fine, people won't see that as a bust first-round pick. They will, but it would not be remarked by the media. Oh, the Giants missed on Jalen Phillips. That would not be as remarked as much if we were a losing team. If we were a losing team, everybody blow up on us. Oh, you missed on Jalen Phillips. That's a big loss, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. But really dynamic player on the defense, especially in my opinion, where he moved from the Pac-12 to the ACC, and then, a year and a half later, in 2020, in a pandemic year, he comes on the field and produces these type of numbers. It's hard to think that he's not a first-round pick, but to some teams he's not because of the injury history, and that's why I have him at number 7 on my board, because I think he could be worth the gamble. So, number 8 overall, J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. Put his stats up there. And last season, 2 interceptions. He's obviously bald, and I like a lot of things in my cornerbacks. I like physicality in terms of pass deflections. I know Adoree Jackson, I think, is definitely good at that. And the one thing I'll say about J.C. Horn that's on the negative side from what I've seen in scouter reports is that he doesn't tackle well. And I really like a corner that can tackle. And that's why I like Afedu Melifonwu a lot, because he can tackle. I like what he did at the Senior Bowl. And I'm not a geek. I'm not an expert in terms of this NFL draft stuff. But when you don't have a tackling corner, and I'm not asking you to be, this stud in the run game and the stud in the pass game in terms of pass deflections and tackles for a loss in the running game, but I need you to tackle. And I know you can make the comparison, Deion Sanders, he covered well, but he couldn't tackle. Right, but is everybody that can't tackle going to be Deion Sanders when they get to the NFL? Absolutely not. So that's just a point to make. But J.C. Horn, I think definitely in those situations, if the Giants drafted him once again, kind of like a Pat Surtain thing, they could work to his strengths. And then if it's a running play or something like that, they'll probably put Adoree Jackson or just put more linebackers or safeties in and do something like that. But J.C. Horn, I would not mind at 11th overall, especially now with Caleb Farley. He had some sort of back procedure. It seems less of a reach now because Caleb Farley, I was considering before, with the opt-out, and he's only played so many games in college. But now that, he had this back procedure, he is way further down my list, I'm going to be honest with you. And J.C. Horn seems like less of a reach here. So that is my thought process on J.C. Horn. Next guy, Azeez Ojulari at Georgia. Let's put him there. A lot of people see him as this, and I've read scout reports, I've watched film. Not so good in the run game. In the passing game, he's probably one of the better rushers in this class, and it's a weak class of rushers, unfortunately. But him and Phillips stick out, but Ojulari in the passing game, he's a good rusher. He had 9.5 sacks this season, if I'm reading that correctly, because I'm sitting far away. And he also had 12 tackles for a loss at Georgia, and he also had a big game against Cincinnati, the Bearcats. I think that was in the Peach Bowl or one of the bowls in 2020. And with that, he had 3 sacks, a safety, and a forced fumble. So you can't just pass on that. Is he worth 11th overall? To be honest with you, I don't think so. That's why he's 9 on my list. That's why I would consider Phillips just a little bit more. But if the Giants traded down to the 2 spots I'm talking about, he is worthy there. And if the Giants drafted him, in my opinion, what they would do, once again, working to strengths and weaknesses, they would put Azeez Ojulari in pass situations, and maybe, and I'm not saying they would take time away from Lorenzo Carter or Carter Coughlin, but in running situations and run game situations and rushing situations, they would probably put in Lorenzo Carter just because of what they saw last year and, the amount of production he had before his injury. So that's probably what they would do. And I'm not saying they won't give him running snaps. That would be kind of stupid just to leave him as a one-dimensional player. But definitely, if the Giants drafted him, they'll use him more as a pass rusher than a run stopper. Because obviously coming out of college, that's his flaw, and they'll try to work with it as best as possible and just make it benefit and make it work. So that is number 9. Number 10, we are almost done with this list, is Rashad Bateman. A lot of people have just signed off on him, not necessarily, said, oh, he should be the pick. A lot of people have, basically pushed him off to the side because the Giants signed Kenny Golladay. I would still be okay with this option. It wouldn't be my top option. It'd be, obviously, on my big board, 10th. He had a down year last year. He opted out, then came back in. But obviously, the year people look at was the normal year of 2019, where he had 60 receptions, over 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns. And, big receiver. He's not necessarily, the separator. He's not the burner, but he's a deep threat receiver. And Kenny Golladay and Rashad Bateman, 2 deep threats, how do you not use them correctly? Just imagine if that happened. I would totally flip out. But 2 deep threats in one offense, and if Jason Garrett used them correctly to Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones having one of the best passer ratings of throws downfield, that would be pretty awesome, honestly. But Bateman, as of right now, is 10th on my list. I also don't think, at this point, especially for the fact that the Giants signed Golladay, he is number 11th overall value. So, with that, I'll take off my big board. I'll take off this stuff, and we'll talk about some trade down options. So let's talk about one team first. Let's talk about number 15, New England Patriots. They are a team, and I'll pull up their picks right now. It's going to be on your right side of the screen. That's according to Wikipedia. Obviously, they wouldn't get it wrong if it's referenced by other sites, because I know Wikipedia obviously has some things wrong with them. But they have the 3rd round pick forfeited because of the spy thing last year against the Bengals. Why would you need to spy against the Bengals? I don't know. But options at 15, at least my options, would probably be the bottom 5 nearest on the board. Elijah Vera Tucker, Micah Parsons, Ojulari, Phillips, and Rashad Bateman. Other options, Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. He could be there. He might not be there, though. Christian Barmore, Alabama, defensive tackle. I don't think we need one. But nonetheless, for the Giants, he is an option because Dalvin Tomlinson is gone. Kwity Paye out of Michigan. A lot of people see him as an edge rusher, but a lot of people also see him as like the Leonard Williams role of our defense, since it would be 3-4 and not 4-3. And linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. A lot of people see him as a hybrid, as a linebacker safety. I think that would work in our defense. I just don't think we need one right now. And if I were to pick one of these 4, I'd probably end up going with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, honestly. No Notre Dame bias there. I am a Notre Dame fan, but no bias intended there. So that would be options at 15. And obviously, looking at their picks, they seem more valuable right now. And just as a spoiler alert, before we get to the other team, they are more valuable. They obviously have the higher pick other than the other team I'm going to mention. And with that, they have more draft picks. So if the Giants wanted to move back, get a couple of mid-round picks, and, just finagle with that, and maybe trade back into the first round, trade back into the second round, something like that, they could do that. Because in that situation, if they trade back to 15 and the Patriots want a quarterback, which they could get a quarterback if they traded with a team, the Giants can haul up on draft picks. You just don't have to stick to 6, which obviously, once again, is better than, next, team is the Chicago Bears. Let me just remove this because it looks a little weird. Obviously, in the right-hand corner, you'll see their picks, and then the left-hand corner, you'll see the options at 20. There are a lot more, I would say, different options at 20 than I would say at 15, because 15 is closer to 11. You're going to have similar value, but for 20, you'll have some extended value for different players and stuff like that. Basically, from the last two lists, including my big board, Ojulari, Parsons, Vera Tucker, Jalen Phillips, I forgot to list him as a defensive end, I don't know how, and Rashad Bateman. Now, others on that list, if Karamoa falls, and Christian Barmore. The new ones I added, Joseph Asai out of Texas, and Fitu Melifanu, those could be potential reaches. I know Melifanu could be. I see him as a late first-round pick, but I really like him. I think he's possibly the third, fourth best corner in this class, and I think he could be worth taking at 20, but I just don't see the glaring need as that bad. And obviously, once again, going back to 11, Surtain is a good defensive player, and, you know, put aside my Adoree Jackson bias, you know, he's a good defensive player. Just Ifeatu Melifonwu, he's not as good of a player as Patrick Surtain, nor did he play in the same amount of competition as Patrick Surtain. So a lot of people would see it as a reach there. As for Joseph Asai out of Texas, I don't know much about him. He would definitely be an option to me, at least because the glaring need at edge. If Ojulari's taken, if the Giants don't feel up to drafting Jalen Phillips and taking that risk, could be there at 20. And obviously Caleb Farley, the other one I added, I would not touch him with a 10-foot pole only because of his injury history, especially for the fact that he just got a back procedure. So here are the picks on my right side, or at least your right side, 20, 52. And with those 7 draft picks, I would say trade back with the Patriots. I know a lot of people say, oh, the Joe Judge Patriots connection. Oh, you know, you shouldn't be trading with rivals, Super Bowl rivals, whatever. But if you could get valued picks out of them, if you could get a couple of mid-round picks, 3rd, 4th round, 2nd round even, good trade for the Giants, and you get more value, you get more potential playmakers, you get more potential offensive linemen, depth. Because the last couple of years we've had bad depth, or at least not enough depth at certain positions, and you need as much as possible. So here, with the Bears, unless they blow you out of the water with a deal and actually offer you some sort of piece, maybe they offer you Anthony Miller or someone else, I wouldn't go with them. I'd go with the Patriots. I wouldn't necessarily want a player on the Patriots. I would just want a couple of draft picks in return for the 11th overall selection. And with that, that comes to the end of this video. Thank you guys for coming out once again. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. Turn the notification button on so you get notified when a live stream pops or a video drops. I rarely do draft videos like this and like scouting and stuff like that. That's not really my, I would say, thing to do. It's not really my thing. But, you know, I wanted to get out there because I want to get my thoughts out there. And I didn't want to stay silent this whole draft period. And I want you guys to know my thoughts before the draft. Obviously, the draft is 7.5 days away. So with that, thank you guys for coming out. Peace out. We'll see you next time. Watch for the next couple of videos in the next couple of days. Yankee recaps, all that stuff. Peace.